Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm gonna talk you about how your height affects your life. So as you can see, we have 5 different men out there with different height. We can see that there's a guy who's like 165, there's a guy 175, 185, 190, and 195. You can see that the guy who's only like 165, he's like really small comparing to the guy which has 175, who is actually dateable. And for the guys of 185, 190, and 185, there's not so much of difference. But how come? Let's find it out. And by the way, I want you guys to remember this graph because it is really important. I would say that your dating value, when it comes down to height, it's pretty much like this. So, the first concept I'm gonna tell you is that the growth of the value of your height is actually exponential. It's not linear, which means that if you think that it's like a linear growth, it will like if I'm 175, then I'm totally fine. I'm 5 out of 10, okay. But the problem is if you're 165 or 170, it's pretty much finished for you. But if you are like 180, 185, or even 190, there's not so much of difference. But why is that? I'm gonna explain you. So it's pretty much like this. So sorry about it, but if you are not even taller than 165, I would say that unfortunately, you will be categorized as a sub 3, which means that you're actually shorter than some women, because in some Western countries the average height is around 165. So it means that you have some big chances to be shorter than some women, which is really bad. And also in the life, you will encounter some nagging. Like people will try to play with your stuff when you're working, when you're at school. People will make fun of you and stuff like that, and you are basically always invisible when it comes down to some environment, when it comes down to some events, some parties. People will not actually see you as a candidate or as a member of the society. And some people, I just remember when it comes back to my high school, there was a guy who's kind of mean, who was always mocking some shorter guys. Yeah, it was really sad. So if you want to even build a friendship, I'm not talking about relationship at all. I'm just talking about friendship. You gotta just the max, which means that you gotta be entertaining your friend 100%, which is like a really bad situation. And for girls, unfortunately, you will always get rejected just based on your height. They will tell you like, oh, I'm sorry, it's just I'm looking for someone who's taller. I'm into someone who's taller, sorry. It's really brutal, to be honest. And if you are between like 165 to 175, I mean, it's kind of better, but you're still in the sub 5 category, which means that you will actually still encounter, I would say that, a huge amount of difficulties. Why? Because you are shooting tall girls, just like these pictures, because in some Western countries, there are a lot of girls who's like 170, 175. So being a guy who's like under 175, it's not really advantage, I would say. And some people will get passive aggression to passive aggressive. I think that's a term, which means that you are not invited to the party. You are not invited when there was like a event or a trip or something. People will not want to talk to you at first. And some people will still nag. They're like, oh, I used to play basketball, but you probably know, huh? So some sort of stuff like that. And if you want to date, I mean really if you want to date, you gotta do jester maxing and beta boxing, which means that you gotta entertain the girl, you're gonna be the jester, which means the clown, and beta boxing, which means that you're kind of like a beta provider. You are using your fame to entertain her, to satisfy her ego, or you're gonna use your financial state to like compensate her, use your money. But when it comes to normie, if you're around 178 to 185, I believe at this point, it actually makes sense for dating. And of course, it's like most of the average guys in the West, it's around 178 to 185. Actually, I think it's a good height. Why is that? Because from this very moment, there will be no rejection based on your height, which means that height is no longer a shortcoming. And also, you can have a really good dating life with a nice face. That's when I think that the face comes around when you reach this sort of height, like 178 to 185, because your height is like you're not too tall to be exceptional, but you're not too short. And when women choosing a partner, I would think that for the height, when it comes to height, they only have a threshold, which means that a minimum height. So it's actually okay to be normal height, actually. But there's one shortcoming is that you can get mocked by some taller guys from time to time. Like there will still be some guys who's like 190, 195. So you can't really, get too much about it because it's a really small percentage of the population. Next, we have 185 to 190. I would say that this sort of guys, chelai, they're like top 15% of guys. It's enough to generate attraction because you are visibly taller than most of the guys. And still, it's seen as some sort of normal height, because you are just taller than most of guys, but not too much. So people will not actually get too jealous about you. They will say something like, yeah, you're just tall. Yeah, it's really nice height. And you will get some compliment, like people will say, yeah, you're pretty tall. Yeah, you are pretty tall, like from girls, from friends in school, from people from work and stuff. And at this point, I believe that the face become more relevant because the face is actually has better, I would say, value at this point because your height is actually pretty tall. I mean, if you get taller, it's not actually increased that so much value, to be honest. And I will talk about it later. So if you think that 185 to 190 is actually chelai, then of course you will think that 190 plus will be some Chad, premium guy. Actually, that is a question. So the first fact you're gonna realize is that it counts only for the top 5% of guys in the Western countries, which means that if you're 190 plus, you are among top 5% of men. You will get a lot of attention from a lot of people. Yeah, like some people, they will remember you as some really tall guy from high school or from work or some other environment just because you are really tall. And sometimes you can get some attraction just from height. I would say that would be the only advantage from the chelaites, because at this point, there will be some girls who are actually only attracted by some really, really tall guys. So at this point, you become as a part of niche, and you will get a lot of compliments. Like girls will compliment about you. They will say like, "Oh, you are really tall. How tall are you?" They will ask you this question, and you are saying, "Yeah, I'm this tall. I'm 193. I'm 195." Sort of stuff. It's really, really good. Even at work, people will ask you, "How tall are you?" "Oh, you're really tall." So it's really good, and you are most likely to be taller than most of the people, so it actually helps with your ego. But when you are growing, I will actually say that you will get a lot of jealousy from other guys. Like some other guys, maybe from your middle school or high school, they will try to nag you. They'll say, "Nah, bro, you're way too tall. If you're way too tall, you're gonna be ugly and stuff. Girls will not like you," those kind of stuff. So it actually exists some sort of jealousy. And also at this point, the bone structure of your face is really, really important, because once you get taller, you will understand is that the bone structure of your face will be longer. A lot of guys, when they reach this kind of tall, when they reach this kind of height, actually, I would say that their face will not be as good. So at this point, you really gonna reconsider it, because at this point, face become really, really important. And the height is not, and the increase of your height is not so much in terms of increase of actually dating value. And also when it comes to ratios, because I remember there was some really tall guys and they just have really, really long body and short legs. And I would say that this kind of ratio is not really, really attractive. So yeah, so let's answer the question. If you're 190 plus, are you a Chad? No, actually Chad, to be honest. Because actually you are kind of only a small margin amount better than the 185 guys. So that's it. That's everything about the height you need to know and what kind of treatment you can get. I would say that once if you reach like 175, the height is not really gonna influence you that much as a negative factor, and it will become a positive factor when you are above 185, and after that it will not make that much of difference, unless some girls are really, really into tall guys, and you can play with that. And that's it. I would say that the face is still the most important. And I will see you guys in my next video. Please subscribe and like my video.